How did you get into this space? Like, what made you pursue this?
It is a sad story that we're hopefully trying to turn into a happy ending. I was personally compromised about 10 years ago. And I think in a lot of ways, this is the company I wish existed in that time. I didn't start the company like right away. Like there was actually quite a few years in between before it became clear that like this is what I wanted to do. But yeah, I think just in the wake of that attack, I realized that three very, very critical things. Like number one, I was outsourcing a tremendous amount of security and privacy to companies I did not think were security and privacy companies, cell phone carriers or Google or I mean, they were incredibly important in my defense, and it just like had never crossed my mind. The second thing is that their defaults were incredibly not in my best interest security and privacy perspective, and we have like a little kitschy phrase about it now. The devil's in the defaults, and it's there's an incentive for them to have less security, less privacy for a lot of reasons. And then the third was that when I needed support, it was not only possible to get a hold of a human, but even once I could, they were unable to coordinate, right? The attackers moved very efficiently, right, out of one product and into another. And at that point, like support was essentially useless. And so I think in a lot of ways, I wish I had been better prepared to handle that. And a company like the one that exists today would have been an ideal partner for me. And then certainly on the reactive support side, like had I had a trusted resource, someone I could have been in touch with who could have first let me know that I had a problem, what was the extent of it, what to do next to stop the bleeding, it's arguable that things would have been like a lot less bad. Yeah.
Do you work with people who have recently been compromised as well, or is it strictly beforehand?
The strong preference is to work with people ahead of a problem. I would say the time pressure that can come with an active incident is like a very, very different type of experience. I think part of like the difference in our communication and our framing of this problem like healthcare is we want to be a primary care physician, not an ER, right? Like we will do it, but it's very, very challenging work. I have a ton of respect for people who do like incident response like all the time. It's very stressful for everyone involved. We will do it, but it's rare. I also think that when you come from an incident response starting point, you tend to have the wrong attitude about what cybersecurity is. You tend to think of it more like I'm having a heart attack, like get me out of this situation, more so that it's something to actually be continuously investing in. That is more of a it's like a trainer. It's you don't go to the gym and it's over, right? It's something you have to stay up with just because your body's changing, things are changing around you. So, yeah, the short answer is we do it on sort of rare occasions, but we are strongly working with people without the pressure of an active incident.
Okay, you work with both individuals, although you highly prefer to be before the incident. How do you
Oh,
actually help these individuals, like, kind of understand where their risk is, maybe some paths that could be taken? Like, how do you bring light to this issue?
yeah, I mean, I know, I mean, we mentioned this in part before, but I think it starts from quantification. Like, you can't improve something unless you're measuring it. So for us, it's like every person is in a little way like different. And for us, it's incumbent to understand who they are before we start making recommendations. As far as how we measure them, we have two inputs to our initial assessment. Number one is we do an intake questionnaire. We will allow them to voluntarily respond to questions that help us assess their posture today. And in parallel, we'll conduct an open source intelligence investigation where one of our analysts will do a survey of them online, looking into, as Mike asked before, social media profiles of them and their family, these press clippings, interviews they've given, nonprofits they're involved with, property records, voting records, LLCs they've created. Of course, we'll look into more darker sources as well, like breach data and such, to find any existing exposures that they might have. Uh, by bringing those two things together, both the voluntary response and the outside looking in perspective, we're able to give like a pretty holistic picture of where we think their biggest risks sit today. As far as how we help, like with the threats in mind, we assign a personalized, what we call a care plan, right, to really sort of hammer home our healthcare parallels here, which is a mixture of software, professional implementations, monitoring that we want to set up for that individual to mitigate the risks that we're most concerned about. Similar to a doctor, there are, of course, recommendations that are extremely consistent person to person in the same way a doctor would say better diet, more exercise, smoking. There are, of course, the same corollaries in our work. Multi-factor is your friend. When you get a call from an unknown number, don't answer it, right? Like these are clearly wholesale recommendations that apply, um, that everyone can learn from. But I think for us, we try and give each of our members the best return on their time in terms of risk reduction that involves some specialized program that can be custom fit for them, given, again, both inputs as well as requests they have. Like we have people who come to us and say, hey, I have an email account that's an AOL account that I can't get into, and it's actually linked to my iCloud. And I'll say, well, it's probably not my biggest concern, but if it's important for you, then let's figure it out, right? And so I think in that sense, we also want to make sure that they're getting what they want. And a lot of people will come to us with some sort of like a to-do list of things that they've been unable to tackle, and we try our best to apply our expertise to help them achieve it. I think in that sense, we try and make for each person the a program that again works for them and give them the best risk reduction.
I think it's pretty interesting that you mentioned the time investment required to take the steps. It's a really good idea and a really good approach, I think, because certain things do take quite a bit more time than others.
Correct.
What kind of goes into that? How do you identify which is more critical versus the time investment there? How do you make that judgment call for your clients?
I mean, I think for us, there has to be a reasonable expectation of how much time is available from an individual, right? Like, I mean, we have like a general sense of what a busy executive and what a busy person looks like. And to say that we're going to meet with them weekly is a joke, right? Like in the same way that CISOs struggle to do annual or quarterly this and that. I mean, we face the same restrictions where there is a difference between urgent and important, and it's hard for people to distinguish between those two. I would say we prefer to be in the important, not urgent category. Obviously, we're available when needed, but I think for us, it's really driven by the threat. Like, what is the threat that would be most devastating to that person, given both likelihood and impact? So a great example is if you're running your entire life through Apple, like I need to make sure that Apple account is secure, which might be different from someone who's more distributed across other big tech companies, whether it be your sort of Googles, Facebooks, et cetera. But I think for us, it has to be customized to that person. Granted, we know there are some workloads that are quite frankly chunkier than others, and they again their calendars have to be respected. Like either the CEO or the chief product officer of Duolingo has this like great idea about like what's more important, like engagement or improvement, like from like a language perspective. And he's like, without the engagement, the second one doesn't matter. So if you're giving people stuff, it's not approachable, it takes too much time, it's too difficult for them, like it only matters, security and privacy only matter if they're used. And if they're not going to use it and you're too cumbersome with their schedule or what have you, like you're not making a difference in my view.
Yeah, I mean that's very true. That friction is a big thing, and if they're not engaged, there's a lot more friction to the problem.
Yeah, and you can't take it. Like I think like a lot of security companies struggle to like, as opposed to other products, in that like there is not like a habitual for a non-professional user, which our core user is the individual at the end of the day. Even though we sell in most cases to security teams for their executives, like our user is the executive. They're not coming back to our dashboard or our products every day, right? I think that's not like that's not what they want. I think if we can position it again more like a trainer or something like that, or a dentist, where there is some amount that is periodic that will manage risk and keep you ahead of problems, like that's the right cadence. And I think it's hard, even for some of our employees, they might take it personally if someone cancels last minute or something like that. And you just have to understand that they're here proactively, and that is much, much better than it being an emergency.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, sorry, this thought just popped into my head.
Yeah.
So, do you act as like the hospital, and then you have multiple doctors that like see your patients, which would be your clients? Is that
Yeah, I mean,
like the structure?
I would think about it like there is an entire team here who is capable of doing a lot of different things. There are certain sort of individuals who are more qualified in certain categories than others. And you could even think of like something like Windows versus Mac as being like a good example. Like if we have someone who's on a Windows machine, like I would prefer someone versus somebody else who might be more proficient in that. But it doesn't mean they couldn't do it the other way. But of course, we have people who have like expertise and stuff like that. I would say as far as the support is concerned, like we very much think of it as like an all hands on deck approach. So I wouldn't say it's like you're assigned to a person. It's your person. I think we have like the infrastructure in place whereby whoever you are speaking to can very efficiently know what they need to know to help you. What type of machine you have? Are you a social media star with 1 million followers, an executive who's trying to be private? I think those relevant factors like have to be at the fingertips to get like great point in time.